Sam's calling from North Carolina. Sam, they, them is deconstructing, and let's see if we can offer any kind of useful help at all.
Hey there, guys.
Hey, Sam, how are you?
Hey, Sam.
I'm all right. Just for, I guess, a little quick background. I was raised in a cult until I was about 13. Really fundamentalist, very, exorcisms on Tuesdays, guys, type of place.
Oh, wow.
My family
I'm sorry.
it was, well, it is what it is. I was a Christian until I was probably early 30s. I started deconstructing and kind of backing off within the last 5-6 years. But the last 2 years, I've really been pulling away from the faith and kind of becoming more agnostic, I guess. Like there could be something I don't know type of feeling about it. My folks are still really religious though. And our family is very close, but a lot of that in the past has come from common religion and going to church together and all that crap. So they have a very set expectation, I guess you could say, for the type of person that they want me to be, which is not working out very well for them at the moment. Unfortunately, I can't really come out and say that I don't believe anymore because I believe that that would cause a rift in the family. My parents would both be terrified because they're both still very religious and, hell is very real and, what if you lose your faith, et cetera, et cetera. They have noticed me backing off and being more vocal about my disapproval and how the church handles things such as the LGBTQ community and abortion and all of the pedophilia and sexual abuse shit that's been going on lately. And I think they're realizing that I'm backing off, but I can't fully say it, and my dad will kind of grill me sometimes. It's kind of like you have to maintain these standards in a way. He one time came over out of nowhere and brought up issues of faith and how's your walk with Christ and all this other stuff. And I told him as best I could, basically, my faith, quote unquote, is different now. Which is not entirely a lie because being gone is different than it was. But, or I told him, I don't believe that being LGBTQ is a sin. I don't believe a lot of the things that I was taught growing up. Or shit that I learned when I went to a theological school. Sorry.
Just a quick question, Sam, just so I can help place this in perspective. Are you still financially dependent on your parents?
Yes and no. Right now I do live on my own, but because of my job and my living situation, I have had to ask them for help a couple times just because we went on strike recently. Yeah.
It just helps inform the kind of replies I might give. I would give different advice to someone who's currently financially dependent than not. So please carry on.
Sure. It's not full dependence. They help me out kind of with groceries sometimes, things like that. Mm-hmm. And I know that they both love me. I know that they're coming at this from the point of we don't want you to lose your faith. My mom has literally cried on the phone about that. And I talking about I haven't told them that I'm non-binary or bisexual or anything like that, because I think that would make their brains implode. And as much as we disagree, I do like having them around. But when I did talk about, I don't believe that being LGBT is wrong, or that I've been listening to, I don't know if y'all are familiar with Dan McClellan. I
Yes.
listen to some of his stuff on YouTube because it kind of helps me look at the Bible more from a historical and cultural basis and those things that have like influenced it rather than this, mystical, unquestionable book that could like ruin your life if you don't follow the rules type of thing. It kind of helps me take the fear out of what I've been taught for so long. But whenever I mention things like that, my dad will be like, "Oh, so the Bible isn't the final authority, and you're saying truth is relative, and so you believe what you believe, and I believe what I believe, and nothing is actually true," stuff like that. And I don't really know
Yeah.
how to
It's,
come back at that argument, if that makes sense.
you've seen this in a couple forms already today. So we
Yeah,
talked about belief and knowledge, and absolute certainty keeps coming up, and whether or not there's whether or not moral truths as oughts exist as a capital T truth, kind of somewhere out there to be discovered, or and that's, we don't ascribe to that. But if your family's coming out, you're going, oh, well, then the Bible's not the ultimate authority. Um, I mean, when somebody asks me, is the Bible the ultimate authority? My answer is, of course not. That's silly. But that's not
right.
the answer that I would have given all the time to everyone, including, when I was finding my way out. But uh, I think one response, okay, I apologize in advance. I'm going to feel gross. And um, this will provide you cover, which is, the Bible isn't the ultimate authority. The Bible is a book. If there is, in fact, a God, then God is the ultimate authority. And the Bible can be wrong about things. And if you, my parents, believe that you can have a personal relationship with God and that God will communicate with you, then you are already in a position of communication that is superior to the Bible. Now, I don't know how well that'll work or how useful it's actually going to be in the long term, but no, even as a Christian, the Bible was not the ultimate authority. Jesus was the ultimate authority.
Right.
That's kind of the whole
Mm,
Protestant revolution or Reformation in a nutshell. Is, no, it's not up to the Bible or this particular church. It's between me and God. And you can actually do that and still be honest. I mean, you're working through stuff, you're figuring stuff out, and it can very simply be, my relationship with God is between me and God.
I try to say that sometimes, but they, again, I love them. They're not like abusive narcissists or something, but they have involved themselves and continue to involve themselves in matters of faith in my life since I was a kid, to the point where it's really hard. It's been very difficult to find myself, I guess, pulling away from this, because the more that I pull away from Christianity, the more I feel like I'm finding who I could have been all along.
Mm.
And it's really, I'm really trying not to become a very angry, like, atheist, I guess. Not that all atheists are angry. That's not what I mean. I just, me personally, being very
I
angry
hope
and
they're all
atheistic
angry at
and
some point.
I feel like they have every right to be, honestly, especially if everybody dealt with this crap. But I don't know how to pull away from it when, like, it feels like they keep trying to drag me back in. And I don't want to damage our relationship because I know they love me and I do love them. You know, if we had an antagonistic relationship, it might be easier, you know, because there's that disconnect. But because there's not, and also because they don't, in a lot of ways, respect me as an adult, it feels like it's really difficult to pull myself away from it and not feel like they're challenging every, pardon my language, goddamn thing that I say, or that I have to defend everything that I say and be on my toes, ready for this question, that question. And if I tell them, like, you know, well, I've been listening to people like Dan McClellan and talking about history and culture and things that influence the Bible. Like, oh, so you're saying people that, you know, just study it for what it is and take life applications from it are stupid. No, I didn't say that. But there's no good faith argument, if that makes sense. If I pull away or if I tell them I'm seeing something different or this is the path that I'm choosing, it's like it's an insult to them. And I don't know how.
You can't.
Sorry, I really didn't mean to get emotional.
There's no
That's
way.
quite all right.
There's no way you can fix how personally they're going to take all of this. My parents and I have pretty much stopped talking about religion and anything even close to it, because we had our arguments and we decided we valued the relationship more than trying to change the other person's mind. But also, they know I'm not going to take any crap and I'm not going to hide who I am. And so, you know, if they're like, "Hey, what are you doing next weekend?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to go speak at a convention." I leave it at that and don't dig in further. But they're going to be upset until they're dead. And sometimes I think a chunk of this may be just ripping the bandage off so that you can get past all the subterfuge and hiding stuff and just be like, this is me. And we're either going to get along with me as me, or you're going to show me that you don't care for me. You only care for a version of me that is willing to pretend to be what you're looking for. I'm going to bet, I hope I'm wrong, but I'd bet right now, Sam, they don't use your preferred pronouns.
They don't know. I can't tell them that I'm
Yeah.
non-binary
And
or
if you
anything like
were to tell them, there's no way they're going to use they them pronouns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
You are in a situation where there's about 23,000 little things all stacked up, and they're all related to who you are and nothing to do with how other people should choose to try to value you, whether or not you are cis, trans, non-binary. None of that is anything where anybody should make any sort of assessment about your value or quality as a human. Similarly, if you're not convinced there's a God, nobody should be making that as an assessment of other aspects of your character. And yet the reality is you're the one in the relationship whose views have changed. And what you're going to have to do is kind of own that part of it for a little while. But that doesn't mean that you don't have to let people push you around, even if they're family members. I don't care if I'm related to somebody by blood or not. They're going to treat me and my family with respect, and I'll do the same thing back. And if we can't get to a point where it's like every time I walk in the house, it's, oh, let me tell you all about Jesus and how Jesus is doing a powerful work here. And this, if we can't get past that, they know I'm just not going to come over. And I get it. I have fucking 10 buckets of privilege that Sam doesn't have, in the sense that, I'm on my own. I've been on my own since I was 18. I have a place to stay. I have, partner. I have people around that are friends with me and care about me, in a way where I don't have, this is going to sound weird. I don't have any need for my parents apart from the occasional back and forth banter of we are related and we generally sometimes like each other or might want to talk about something on occasion. Outside of that, um, it, like I made a decision one day that if I had to cut my parents completely out of my life, I would. And that's not a decision that everyone is in a position to make for a number of reasons. And it's not even a position, it's not a decision that I can say I would recommend to people. The only time I recommend it is if you're convinced that anyone is, if they remain in your life as things are, is making your life worse, then you should put up a wall and stop having contact with them until that situation changes. Either they change or you change or the situation changes. So yeah, what I ended up doing may not be right for hardly anybody. And as it turns out, I didn't have to do it. Like I haven't cut my parents out of my life. I just made the decision that I would if it were the best option.
So Matt and I are not therapists at all by any stretch.
True.
But one thing that I definitely learned through the same process that similar to what you're going through is the phrase or the term boundaries and how boundaries apply to relationships. And that's completely separate from the whole atheist, any kind of question you might have in life. Relationship boundaries are a very important thing. So one thing I would very much encourage you to do is to seek people who are therapists, either a personal therapist or people with qualifications online through books or videos or whatever, and just explore what healthy relationships looks like with boundaries in place. Because it sounds like if you do, like Matt and I, we've chosen to continue to have relationships with our parents with certain boundaries in place, and the explicit notice that, at least in my case, and I think in Matt's, that these boundaries will be respected or the relationship will end. And the boundary is the cost of the relationship we value. And so that would be just something Matt and I aren't going to be able to express as well as a therapist can. So that boundaries is something it sounds like your relationship needs, to my untrained ear.
It's I do actually have a therapist that I talk to weekly. She's helped me out a lot. In, I guess putting boundaries in when it comes to family is definitely part where I struggle. Because how I was raised, it was very much, oh, well, if you're not being completely open, if you're not being completely honest, then you're hiding something or you're lying about something. So
one thing I would recommend that you promise to your parents, and only because it worked for me, was I promised, and they had similar concerns about truth. I promised that I was never going to give up looking for what is true. And I told them that what true is for me, and that they agreed for them, is what conforms most to reality. And so I committed to them never to give up looking for what is most going to conform to reality. If God is correct, then God is part of reality, and they can be confident that I would eventually find that. And that is a promise that you probably can make as well. Look, Mom and Dad, I am going to. I'm sorry, I'm assuming it's Mom and Dad. Look, Mom and Dad, I promise that if God is real, I will never give up trying to figure that out. But all I can do is evaluate against what is real. And so, since you, Mom and Dad, are confident that God is real, you should let me pursue this in full faith in their Holy Spirit or whatever, that is the conclusion you will also come to. But that God has no grandchildren, so you can't just inherit this knowledge, right? You need to come to it on your own. So that is a promise that I made that helped. I don't know if, and because of similar concerns about truth, I don't know if that's, when the time is right, maybe that's something you can do as well.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I'll definitely write that one down. I guess just as a last question then, when it comes to things, and I realize you both said that you're not therapists, but like in your own lives, when you put those boundaries in place with your parents, or with other theists in your life, trying to get them to respect, like, that you have thoughts and opinions and they don't always align with Christianity or whatever. I've noticed that whenever I try to do that, the boundary itself is seen as a moral failure of sorts, because it's like, well, you wouldn't have to do this if you were, quote unquote, on the right side of things, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Is that something that you had to deal with? And if so, was there a way that you were able to approach it from
For
the perspective of, like, it not being a moral failing, but also showing them it's like, I know it's not a moral failing, but trying to tell someone else that, especially when they're on the phone crying to you about how, oh my God, you're losing your faith, kind of difficult, I guess.
So for me, one thing that I did was I basically said to my parents, okay, you believe that God has a plan and that everything happens according to God's plan. Um, and you believe that, you can pray, and interact with God. So you should be praying for God to reveal himself to me, because you know me and you know that if God reveals himself to me, I will no longer, um, you know, doubt his existence. Um, Now, I could be in a position where I absolutely believe there is a God and not worship it, just like I could be in a position where I am absolutely under a king and still be wanting to stage a revolt. But the issue of someone thinking that you've given up your moral foundation is separate from whether or not they think you're actually immoral. And in my case, my parents are in a weird position where they're absolutely convinced that I work for Satan and I'm leading people to hell. And yet they know me and see what I do, and they would have to acknowledge that I am a fairly principled and moral person. I do things that they absolutely think are immoral, but I don't. And mostly they're okay with that kind of stuff. It's not so much, oh, Matt did something we consider immoral, because they've both done things that they consider immoral. Everybody's done so. This is the thing about Christianity is, oh, we're not perfect. We're just forgiven. We still sin and do all that stuff. God just forgives us. It's not that we're better than you. It's just that God likes us better than you. And it is in that mindset pretty easy for them to say, oh, they know I'm not running around murdering people. And yet, wouldn't actively leading people to hell be worse than murdering them? I would think so. And yet somehow they have to reconcile in their mind that even though I'm not murdering people and am doing something worse in their view, which would be leading people to hell, that somehow this is still part of God's plan, because everything happens according to God's plan. And so maybe God is saving up to convert me at some later time. And I think in your case, you can try a number of different tactics, but the one thing is, if nothing else, it can always be, I'm going through a lot, pray for me. I can't talk about it right now, but pray for me. It is a way of kind of avoiding the issue, but avoiding the issue might be the best thing for you and some other people on occasion.
All right. Thank you both. I really appreciate your time and your patience while I got this out.
No worries. And
And I
Sam,
really appreciate your advice.
definitely reach out to recoveringfromreligion.org and possibly the Secular Therapy Project. There are counselors and people out there that can help, and people who've been through this. My experience with my parents is going to be very, very, very different from yours. And each situation is going to be different. I hope you find a way to both be comfortable with who you are in the situation that you're in, without having to hide everything, or being a doormat, or being the constant keep my head down and try to avoid eye contact and problems, that it's overwhelming, and I can't imagine how much you're going through. But yeah, recovering from religion, psychotherapy project, and reaching out to others. I mean, you attack us on Thursdays. There's people who are also non-binary who are on that show. If you haven't called and talked to them, it might be a good opportunity to call to talk to someone who's lived experiences as a non-binary person, and the conflicts and problems that they go through might be more beneficial than anything the cishet white guys are going to say.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. And you said it's on Thursdays?
Yep.
Transatlantic Call-In Show is every Thursday at 2 p.m. Central. I don't have the new list of who's hosting this week.
It's Arden and Josie.
There we go. So yeah, you can call in and talk to the lovely and talented producer down at the end of the hall, who I happen to have a massive crush on, but don't tell her.
My lips are sealed.
Sam, thanks for calling, and
Thank you,
cut
Sam.
yourself some slack. Make sure that you have a group of people somewhere, online, in person, whatever, who you can go and talk to when we're not on the air and when the stress gets overwhelming. If you want somebody to commiserate, find the person who can sit there and listen and comfort and be like, yeah, I told you they were crazy, or whatever it is you need to hear. And then when you're ready for some actual backup, make sure that you're building relations with folks. And I know it's hard. It's like hand wave it away as, oh, go make some friends. No, make specific types of friends to fill the type of space that you need and support you in a way that isn't just, it'll get better. Then platitudes can make you feel good in the short term, but they don't do much to fix an issue. And
they're very much the case. I do have one of my closest friends is atheist, actually, and they've really helped me through
Awesome.
this. I think without them,
Glad to hear that.
and ironically, another friend who is Christian, both of them have actually kept me alive over the last couple of years.
There you go.
So I have a lot of really good support in that regard.
Hold them close.
Big virtual hugs for you, Sam. And we're going to move on to some other callers, but reach back out and don't forget about TACUS, because I'm sure that they would have better advice than us on a number of things.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate your time and your advice and support. Thank you for taking my call.
You bet.
You're welcome. Thanks,
Have
Sam.
an awesome Sunday. It's a really good time to remind people. We've got about 5 calls left. And for all of you who are on hold, just stay on hold. We'll take you. We'll run long and get to those calls. It's funny to me how often we hear about a version of Christian love that is the exact opposite of what some of them might portray. Even though I acknowledge, I don't think there's truly anything like unconditional love. I just don't buy that. I think even as a parent, there are things that might make you not love your child. But I don't have kids, so I can't say for sure. I can say there are things that make me hate other people's kids. That part is definitely true. But we keep hearing about, oh, we love you, we love you, we love you, and God loves you. And I will say that Christians often seem to be reflecting the very love that they think is like God, where it's about punishment and following the rules and order and a very narrow view of justice, and with incredible restrictions on what you can do, what you can say, who you can be. How far, mom and dad, how far can I push it before you actually you can still sit there and be like, well, we love you, but we're going to kick you out. We love you, but we're not tolerating any of this. We love you, but we don't want to interact with you anymore. Where's the line? Is it being gay? Is it being trans? Is the line being a Democrat, being a libertarian? Is the line, you know, you can pick your thing, whether it's political, whether it's moral. If you're just, you know, just for some people, just being okay with other people getting married who happen to be same-sex couple, just being okay with it is enough, you know, to get you tarnished, you know, guilt by association type thing.
Eric, do you want to learn how to Mongolian throat sing? Check this out.
No,
you try.
No, keep that shit to yourself. Don't hear it.
Anyway, thanks for watching that clip. Patreon.com/calltheline is where you could support us. And maybe subscribe and like the video, because it was a killer video. Or maybe it wasn't. Was it a Forrest video? If this was a Forrest video, you don't have to click like. If it was an Eric video, go ahead and click dislike.